So the biggest employer in the country is the United States military. The Department of Defense employs 1.4 million active duty men and women, plus a civilian workforce of more than 700,000, which is why, as private companies have started to require their workers to get vaccinated against COVID, all eyes have been on the U.S. military to see if the nation's largest employer would mandate vaccines too. President Biden has already required that all federal employees get vaccinated, and many service members are already required to receive certain vaccines. But the U.S. military has a complicated history with mandatory vaccines after it required all service members to receive an experimental anthrax vaccine in the 90s. President Biden has asked his Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, to first study whether or not the COVID vaccine should be mandatory for the U.S. military. The New York Times is reporting that the Defense Secretary will make his final recommendation to the president in the next few days. Joining us now is NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Cubie. Also joining us is Paul Rieckhoff. He's the founder of the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America, as well as the host of the Independent Americans podcast. It's great to see you both. Courtney, tell me first where this stands and if you have any tea leaves that you can read about what Secretary Austin is inclined to recommend.
So he's inclined to make this mandatory for U.S. service members, and I think we'll see that in the next literally couple of days that announcement will come out. So, I mean, he's already telegraphed that, by the way, and President Biden said last week he wanted the Defense Department to look at this. You know, you mentioned in the intro that the DOD has a complicated history, and that's the real with vaccinations, mandatory vaccinations, and that's the real crux of this issue right now. All along, we have been hearing from the Pentagon and specifically from people close to Secretary Austin that they did not want to make this mandatory because of the military's history with these mandatory vaccines like the anthrax. There has been this reticence to make anything that's an emergency use authorization mandatory for military because they don't want it to look like they're using the military as guinea pigs for new or experimental medicine. But this is a different situation. We already have tens of millions of people around the world who have taken these vaccines, including many military members themselves. More than 65% of them have gotten 2 doses when you look at it across the services. So that's, I think, what changed the calculus here for the military. We know now that Secretary Austin is open to this. They have looked at it. We've been told, even after the president made the announcement last week, we were told that it would happen very quickly within a matter of days. So we should expect that announcement to come very soon, Nicole.
Paul Rieckhoff, I was trying to find a tweet that I saw you put out tonight, and you've listed all the vaccines that are already required for men and women in the military, and I'd ask you to do that again for us. Obviously, the anthrax history is recent, and I believe we should give credit where credit is due. I believe right now, today, as of August, where are we, the 5th, the military is vaccinated at slightly higher levels than the general population, but come at this however you see fit tonight.
This is coming. This needs to happen, and frankly, it should have happened already. I mean, we can't afford to have 30% of our military unvaccinated. We can't afford to have Navy SEALs and fighter pilots and other people in the military who are on the front lines of all of our global conflicts coming down with COVID. They're in barracks, they're in vehicles, they're on ships. We've already had the USS Roosevelt, an aircraft carrier, had to come back to shore because they had a COVID outbreak in the fall of last year. So this is about our national security. This should transcend politics, and it really cuts to the core of how dangerous this anti-vax rhetoric and agenda has become. It's endangering our national security. To have hundreds of thousands of American men and women in uniform at risk for a virus is something our enemies are celebrating. Putin loves this. Kim Jong-un loves this. ISIS loves this. And every day that Biden waits, our enemies are celebrating. So I think it should have happened already, and I hope it happens soon.
Well, you and I have had a lot of really frank conversations about the military as a reflection of what's going on in the rest of our broken, badly damaged politics. I mean, how much of this is a reluctance to step in something that we all know has been highly politicized?
All of it.
Paul.
You know, Biden needs to. All of it. Biden needs to bite the bullet here and do what's right for our national security and do what's right for our military. When I was in the Army, I got more stuff put in my arm than I can remember, and I never got an option. And you can't, decide you're not going to wear body armor when you go out on patrol. You can't decide you're not going to wear a helmet. These things are designed to protect you, and so is a vaccine. So if you won't take the vaccine, get out of the military. It means you're not a team player. It means you're not willing to be a leader. And it means you're putting other people at risk. So this is really about the core of not just the vaccination effort across the country, but our national security globally. So I hope that Biden will bite the bullet here, step forward, take whatever political flack he has to do, because lives are literally at stake.
And Courtney, it seems that, as your reporting suggests, that is the view from the top of the Pentagon. What is the process? Is it simply due diligence? Is it simply looking like they had a chance to, ask internally how this would happen? Or is it really, as Paul's suggesting, all because of the political moment?
So, I mean, the secretary he wanted to consult with medical professionals before they made this mandatory. And there actually is a process they have to follow. President Biden has to issue a waiver because this, again, is an emergency use authorization medication. He has to actually issue a waiver before they can make it mandatory for members of the military. It's expected that's going to happen. And I think what we'll hear when they make for all active duty service members, I think we will hear the word readiness a lot. And that's going to be the military needs to remain a ready force. It's exactly what Paul was just talking about, that we have these people who are deploying all over the world, in places where there aren't a lot of vaccines and where there are outbreaks of COVID. And it's a matter of keeping those men and women ready to fight at all times. And that's going to be the argument that I expect, according to a number of defense officials who I've spoken with, that I expect Secretary Austin to make here for why he made this decision.
We will keep watching with both of your help. Courtney Kube, NBC News Pentagon correspondent, and our friend Paul Rykoff, founder of IAVA and the host of the Independent Americans podcast. Thank you both so much for being here with us tonight. Coming up for us, as the rest of America remains largely divided along ideological lines between the vaccinated and unvaccinated, is there anything that can break through and persuade those skeptics? That conversation's next.